When I was 13, I asked my parents if I could drop out of middle school and go to college. I had been in and out of various gifted programs since I was about 6. At the time I was in 7th grade, the only advanced class I was taking at the time was geometry, and I had already finished all of geometry 2 months before the year ended. I really wanted to do math, but I wasn't getting to do the type of math that I wanted to do. And I wanted to do history, I wanted to do English, I wanted to do a lot of things, but I was limited by the coursework that was given to me. And I didn't have a lot of friends, I couldn't relate very well to the other people at my school, and I didn't know when things were going to get better. And then I had a conversation with somebody who told me about an opportunity to change everything. He told me about this little program at the University of Washington in Seattle, where I live. It takes middle school students who are bored and frustrated and looking for a new challenge, students like me. It takes them into this year of grueling college preparatory work. They take lots of classes. It's reported to have 5 hours of homework a night. This was one of the most exciting things to me. And then after the end of that year, they go to the University of Washington as freshmen. I was a lot more enthusiastic about this than my parents were at first. One of the first questions they asked me was, "But what about the prom?" This is a really common question that parents have for students who want to do stuff like this. They were concerned that if I didn't go to high school, I wouldn't get those high school experiences that everybody gets, like prom, parties, hanging out with friends. But they let me apply to the program anyway, after some convincing. And I got in, and I ended up going through the program, and what I discovered was I ended up getting a lot of those experiences anyway. We did have our annual spring dance. We called it Not a Prom. We also had a drama society, which would put on a play every year. I like to think of it more like a small high school on a college campus, rather than a subset of a college. Today I'm going to be talking about the lessons I learned starting 7 years ago when I asked my parents about college. I graduated college last year. First lesson I learned, the ability to fail is a valuable skill. I spent a lot of time failing, especially in that first year, and I had to learn how to take that information, not take it personally, and use it to better myself. Number 2, it's okay to have unique needs. When I'm talking about unique needs here, I'm referring to things like accommodations for disabled students. I'm also referring to abstract things like needing support from your family during difficult times. Number 3, the type of person you are is a choice you make. I call myself an ex-gifted kid because being gifted is not something I choose, but being things like driven and compassionate is something that I do choose, and I make those choices all the time. Number 4, most importantly, ask for help. I've been asking for help ever since that day I talked to my parents. I'm still asking for help now. And it's a valuable skill, and if you want to accomplish things and be successful, you need to understand that you can't do that alone. So, the ability to fail is a valuable skill. I started the first year of college preparation in September 2011. This was about 6 months after I had that talk with my parents. In the first few weeks, we were going through a course load that's a lot heavier than what's usually expected of a college freshman. We were taking 5 classes: English, history, pre-calculus, ethics, and physics. And we were expected to start performing at a college level very quickly. We were getting a ton of feedback from our professors. I remember one paper I got about 2 weeks into the program. I had these paragraphs of feedback from my teacher explaining everything I did wrong, and a grade of 1.7 out of 4, which was like the worst grade I had ever gotten. And I was kind of devastated by that at first. I wasn't used to not succeeding at things, especially not succeeding at things that I didn't try to succeed at. And what kept me going was the knowledge that everybody's expected to struggle and fail when you're doing something like this. I mean, a lot of pressure was put on us. We put that pressure upon ourselves too, but it was important to remember that I was asking a lot of myself, and I needed to learn, and I needed to grow by talking to people. And I ended up spending a lot of time talking to my history professor about that paper. And it took the whole year, I'd argue, but eventually I did learn how to write at a college level. But the other thing I learned was that failure is not a personal judgment against yourself. It's not a final statement of who you are as a person. It's a bit of information, and you can use that information to become better. And that's something that you have to do continuously, and it requires a bit of humility to know that you can't succeed at everything, but that humility carried me very far. Number 2, it's okay to have unique needs. So I graduated from that first year, that was kind of like my high school graduation, and I started at the University of Washington. I went there for a couple years, and when I was 16, I moved on campus. It was my first time living away from my parents. And a lot of things started to come up all at once. I was having trouble taking care of myself, as I think many 16-year-olds would without their parents. One thing that happened that was a little ridiculous was I would go to class, and I'd be sitting in these big lecture halls with up to 700 students. It would be fall. People are starting to get sick. So I'm sitting in class, taking notes, trying to pay attention, and I hear a noise like that. And it breaks my concentration, and it's a lot more anxiety-inducing than it used to be when I was younger. So I try to get my focus back on the teacher, and I'm just like desperately trying to ignore the sounds. It keeps happening. And throughout that whole class period, I'm no longer paying attention. I'm just focusing on trying to predict when it's going to happen again and trying to deal with that. And I ended up skipping a lot of class that year because it was just too much for me, and I wasn't getting anything out of class anyway. And after a while, I realized that this could not continue. I ended up talking to a psychiatrist about it, who told me about something called misophonia. This literally means hatred of sound. It's something that one study estimates that 20% of college students have, and it's having a fight or flight reaction to a relatively innocuous noise like sniffling. She also told me that I have ADHD, which explained a lot of the problems I was having with self-management, and it also explained other things about myself. And it was really useful for a couple different reasons. One was I legally had the right to go to my school and say, hey, I need accommodations. And they set me up with a system so that I could wear headphones, and the input into the headphones would be whatever the teacher was saying into this little microphone that I carried around with me, which meant that I could filter out all that background noise and just focus in class. And it was like a miracle how quickly that improved everything in my life, not having that source of stress. And as for the ADHD thing, there's this concept of twice exceptional, which refers to gifted students who have disabilities. And I think it's a little bit misleading because in my case, I consider my giftedness and my disability to come from the same source, which is ADHD. Because I have ADHD, I can do things like make connections very quickly. And when you're working in research, that's a great thing to be able to do because you're looking at data all the time and you need to make those connections. And I talk to a lot of people with ADHD who are incredibly successful and who have found ways to manage the more negative parts of it, like being disorganized, for example. And what I've learned is that once you can manage that and once you have that knowledge about yourself, the positive aspects of it can really shine. So I consider ADHD for me to be kind of like a superpower because it gives me the ability to do things that other people can't do. And all superpowers come with a weakness. In my case, I'm pretty disorganized and I get easily distracted. But I know how to deal with that now. And because I'm not ashamed of that part of myself, it means that I can really appreciate the parts of it that really improve my life and make me the person that I am. Number 3, the type of person you are is a choice you make. So I graduated last year. I've always wondered, when you're in high school, there are a lot of bullies, and there are a lot of geniuses. I've wondered where they go after high school, because you don't use those words for adults a lot of the time. Sometimes you do, but not as much as you do in high school. So what happens? Where do they go? In my experience, the label of gifted kind of fell away after I graduated from school. It's something that people don't really care about once you're in the working world, especially in a field like scientific research where everybody is brilliant. The only time I really talk about my age in a professional setting is when I need to tell people I can't meet them at a bar. And this can be a little bit difficult to deal with if you spent your whole life calling yourself gifted, having that label, and having that be your entire identity. Because it means that once you lose that, you kind of lose your entire sense of self. And so what I've been doing is I've been working to replace the label gifted with things like driven and passionate. And for example, I consider myself to be good at educating people. I've spent a lot of time helping people with math. Right now I volunteer every week helping kids with social skills. That's not something I was born knowing how to do, it's something I had to learn. And I made that choice a few years ago to have that be part of who I am. Same with music. I played piano for a really long time. These days I sing in a choir. I've been doing that for a few years now. And that's also not something I was born knowing how to do. It's a skill that I had to hone. I am from a family of people that I consider to be incredibly gifted. My brother Michael is the starting quarterback at his high school. My sisters Kate and Coco do track and field, and they're really good at it. They really impress me. And they're that way because they've chosen to work really hard and make sacrifices and give up their time and all this commitment so that they can accomplish these things. My brother would not have made it to starting quarterback if he didn't make the choice to be that type of person, a leader, an athlete. And same with my sisters. They made the choice to commit themselves to track and field. And it's really paid off for them, and I'm really proud of them. And I'm trying to internalize the idea that I can be like them in a way. I can work really hard to meet my goals, and I can make the type of person I am be a choice. And it's a choice that I make every day, what type of person I am to the world. It's not a label that was imposed on me when I was 6. It's a choice, and it's completely controlled by me. And that's really important. The theme of all of this is asking for help. I have been asking for help ever since I was 13. When I was 13, I didn't really think I needed help with anything. When I talked to my parents, I thought all I was asking from them was for them to sign a consent form. But I was asking for a lot more than that. I was asking for their support. And I was telling them that something was wrong and that I needed help. I wasn't getting the love I needed from my peers. I wasn't getting the stimulation I needed from school, and something had to change. So even that, saying that I wanted to go to college, was a cry for help in a way. And that's a good thing. I think if I hadn't made that choice, I would be a much different person. And I asked for help from my teachers, I asked for help from my family all the time, I asked for help from professionals who can give me the help I need. I asked for help from my coworkers and my bosses. And asking for help is it requires a lot of humility, but it also requires an acknowledgement that nobody can do anything alone. Some people, including me when I was 13, think that you can do everything alone, but I can't. And acknowledging that means that I can really succeed because I surround myself with people who will help me and support me in anything I try to do. So I'd like to invite all of you, no matter what your background is, no matter whether you consider yourself gifted, no matter what you've been told about yourself, to always challenge yourself, always strive to provide for yourself whatever you need, and through that, always ask for help. Thank you.